Hello, I'm Mish, and I invite you in today to be inspired, invigorated, and nourished. This podcast, in her own way, is for women who are ready to empower themselves to live an aligned life that is unapologetic, rich, and radiant. An open discussion that is transparent about the struggles, tips, and stories of women who have come to live in their own truth, power, and sense of self. I'm absolutely thrilled that you're here and with me on this journey. Wow, today is 1 year anniversary of making a hugely radical decision in my life to have weight loss surgery. And some of you may started to find me now before the last year. Some of you may have followed me since I started my doTERRA business. And some of you have known me for a long time. But I think it goes without saying that this last year has been one of the most radical and transformative years of my life. Probably as radical and transformative as the year after my breakup when I was 24, 25. That probably was radical in the opposite way. I would even say this last year for me has been more radical than the year after I had my baby, when I got married. Probably even more radical than when I moved to Australia. I think it was as yin and yang, as radical as, like I said before, the breakup in 2008, 2009, that kind of precipitated this whole crescendo of downward spiral with a binge eating disorder. So I think it kind of goes with saying that my disclaimer to this is I'm not a professional, and I would encourage every single person out there who listens to this episode who feels like they need support to please reach out to their doctor, to please get properly trained psychologists or psychiatrists or people who are especially trained in eating disorder, body image awareness. I think that there's a lot of programs and people that run things, but when it comes to the end game, you need to have proper trained mental health support, and I'm 100% for that. So I think it kind of goes without saying, let's just take a quick snapshot of where I was maybe even 30 years ago. So when I was 4, my parents got divorced, and I don't put any responsibility on anyone from my past, but I think it's an important transition to understand where this comes from, right? So when I was 4, my parents got divorced, and that was the beginning really of my binge eating disorder. That was when I was eating uncontrollably. I had no restriction on food intake. There was a lot of finish everything on your plate. There was a lot of, at the time, there wasn't a lot of awareness around sugar and connection to emotional eating and food. And we had something in school called the Banana Splits Club, where the psychologist at the time would bring all the kids who had divorced or separated parents into, a lunch type of a thing where we'd eat ice cream and we would console our emotions around food. And so, there's a lot of awareness now that wasn't then. And so it's water under the bridge. But I think it's an important understanding that for probably about 13 years of my life, I had uncontrolled access to food, and food was a way for me to deal with my emotions, and probably also a way for people around me to just let me be with my emotions. So when I was around 16, 17, the Atkins Diet was really popular, the kind of now keto-ish type diet. And my aunt and uncle had a lot of success with it. And I kind of was in that hormonal phase of I want boys to, I want boys to like me, and I want boys to see me. And so I started doing Atkins. And I also started at the same time doing exercise for the first time. So there was an aerobics class that I did 3 times a week, and then I started to run, and it was great. And I lost weight. It was I needed to lose the weight. I was morbidly obese at the time, probably topping over 300 pounds. That was wonderful. And it just was the awareness of my body and movement and exercise, which then went over into university, and I started to lose more weight. I joined Weight Watchers, and I had a pretty healthy relationship with food, honestly. I went out, I did the normal university things, drinking a little bit here and there and going out and, eating pie and chips and burgers and, all those type of things, but it wasn't an obsession. So fast forward to right before I moved to Australia in 2006, I was the healthiest I ever was. I was working out. I was just had a really positive, healthy relationship with food. But those seeds of addiction with food and obsession with food were definitely there. And so it was weighing everything to the gram. It was counting everything to points. It was not obsessing, but being really hyper vigilant around calorie counting and point counting and making sure I was exercising and how many points I got for the exercising. So all of those kind of obsessive patterns with dieting were definitely being laid. I moved to Australia. I was 24 and I met a guy who was a lot older than me. He had traveled the world. He was very well off. He drove a Rolls Royce. He lived in a penthouse in the downtown of Fremantle, which is a really ritzy area of Perth. And I wanted him to love me, and he was my first real boyfriend. And looking back, I was just desperate to be loved and adored by a man. And he was there, and he loved to control. Looking back, he's narcissistic and quite insecure. And what transpired through that relationship was very, very, very unhealthy. So he basically said, I want you to lose weight and I want you to be thin and we should be intimate together and all of those type of things. So I lost my virginity to him at the time, and we had this kind of really unhealthy relationship. And what that transpired was this hyper obsession with wanting him to love me and prove my worth to him, which also happened to be in my schooling as well. So I had completed an undergraduate degree with honors. I had completed a master's degree with honors before I met him. And so my perfectionism and seeking for approval came out and through in our relationship, which basically saw me drastically cut my weight. Him saying how great it was that I was skinny. I remember those exact words. Now you're finally skinny. And a binge eating disorder that started then. So everything that I had had from my childhood that I kind of had managed through calorie counting and point counting through my late teens, early 20s had then come out in a raging form in this relationship. So what it looked like was weighing in, binge eating for 3 days, starving myself for 3 days, weighing in, binge eating for 3 days. It was just a vicious, really vicious cycle. And it was so vicious, I couldn't even understand what had happened. And I did seek counseling after our relationship. And the thing that ended our relationship was two things. One, I knew he wasn't going to be the father of my children. So I thought, well, what's the point of this exercise? And the second was his fear, which he voiced, is that I was going to gain all the weight back that I lost. And it was just a really dark space. And that space was kind of tenuously held through another master's degree that I did with honors, working full time, getting a little bit of weight back, getting some more weight back, probably going into a depression, which I never probably actively treated carefully. And then getting into a relationship with my husband now, who is completely the antithesis of my ex-boyfriend. And that kind of subsided. It definitely subsided. There were still inklings of it. There were still abusive patterns around it. And it was absolutely kicked up after my daughter was born and I started my business with doTERRA. Now, again, I'm not going to blame doTERRA under any circumstance, but I will put a caution on that the intense pressure cooker of the entrepreneurship world, and especially network marketing, can be an absolute disaster. I'm actually happy to say that. Disaster for people who have addictive behaviors and or a tendency to fall into the perfectionism, workaholism, hustle pathway, which is exactly what I did. So I took everything that I had had from my childhood. I had everything that I had after my ex-boyfriend, and it was just this beautiful tailspin of perfectionism, workaholism, accolade, praise, and complete disregard for my health. So what it looked like on the outside was this acceleration of my business, reaching these targets really quickly, topping in the second prize, in this massive Australia, New Zealand-wide competition. Everyone knew who I was. I'd speaking in front of thousands, 800 to 1,000 people. I was the kind of, I guess, one of the it girls in that season. And I distinctly remember when I could not fit into my clothes anymore, because what was happening was I did not have the emotional regulatory skills and or the tools to deal with the pressure and to deal with the insanity that I was cultivating in my life. Absolutely not. And so when I realized that A, I wasn't going to be the it girl forever, and B, I was not happy with the speed that I was running. And I also felt like I couldn't hold on to the energy and the space and the vastness of my business. I knew that I had to get help. And I had to get help not only because I wasn't coping mentally, but I had to get help because I was pre-diabetic. I was borderline insulin resistant. I was hypertensive. I was a registered nurse at that time. So I'd done another master's degree and became a registered nurse in between the breakup and my daughter being born. And what I realized was that I had all of these things that I could put onto a wall in frames. I had the suitcase, I had the trophies, I had the pins, I had the status quo, but I wasn't happy. And I was actually quite miserable. I was miserable looking back. And I was completely and totally clouded in who I was and what I wanted to bring to this universe. Everything I thought that I wanted, I didn't want. Everything that I was given didn't feel aligned or authentic. The money was flowing in, the fame was flowing in, but I felt the emptiest I'd ever felt. In fact, I felt as empty or more empty than I did when I broke up with my ex-boyfriend. They were parallel in darkness for different reasons, but both of them were because I wanted someone or something or people to tell me that I was worthy. And so I did everything I could to continue to get that affirmation outside of myself. And as it's a slippery slope, once you kind of do a little bit, you need more, 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 which means you have to give more of yourself because you have to keep stepping deeper into the spotlight in that way. So at the end of October 2016, after gaining 35 kilos in 18 months, which was the irony behind it was I was working in this health industry, right? Promoting healthy lifestyles, healthy living, the freedom. You'll have all this freedom to do whatever you want, be whoever you want. And in fact, I was the most unhealthy I'd been since I was 18 or 17. And I wasn't free at all. I maybe had the ability to have money in that gave me financial leeway at the time, but I wasn't free at all. That was the irony and the tension behind why it was so painful for me at that point. So in October of 2016, I went into my GP, which is a doctor here in Australia, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to deal with this. And I remember walking in and nothing in my wardrobe fit. I always wore black things. And I sat in that chair and I remember how much courage it took to say that I needed help. And not only did I just need a little bit of help, I needed help right now because my life was out of control. It was out of control. And there's nothing more interesting than sitting with a doctor who has a 5-minute slot for you and you feel like you could be there for 50 years unloading your life. But I basically could just get out in between this suffocating rise of emotion that I needed help for a binge eating disorder and that I was completely addicted to food. And that process of just being in that courage was so terrifying and yet so liberating. I didn't even know what the next year and a half was going to be. I had no idea why. I had no idea looking back why God had placed me in this journey of like lesson after lesson, pattern repeating after pattern repeating, going, what the heck have I done? I've created this monstrosity of a business that I don't even want to hold anymore. I just want to throw it all away. I feel completely out of control and out of touch. I'm so horrifically unhealthy. And so I knew before I went into that session who I wanted to see. Ironically, her name is the same name as my daughter. And I remember booking an appointment and seeing her a couple weeks later and just walking into that room going, I'm an addict. Like, I am a full-on binge eating food addict. And it was only when I started to just accept the fact that I was an addict and I was using food the same way that people use pornography, the same way that people use heroin and cocaine, the same way that people abuse opioids. I was doing the exact same thing. But the irony is that in society, we are binge eaters, we're binge drinkers. We joke about binge watching things as escapism. And when I said I have a food addiction, people kind of look at me like, oh yeah, I like food too. Or, oh yeah, I overeat all the time. It's like, no, it is a diagnosable eating disorder. And when I sat on that chair in her room for the first time, after about a half an hour into our hour session, she looked at me and she goes, I really would encourage you to go to rehab. And it was in that moment that I felt like everything that I had known, every mask, every cave, every chocolate bar, every ice cream container, every sneaky way that I had eaten food for the last 35 years since I was 4, just fall in front of me. I was an addict. And it wasn't just that I had an issue with food. It was that I had an addiction to food and that I needed treatment immediately. And in my mind at the time, I was still like, no, I can't stop my business. I can't. I have so much to do. I have all these things I need to get done. Can we negotiate not going to rehab? And so we negotiated. And so I saw her intensely for 6 months every fortnight. And about 12 weeks into our treatment, I had the courage again for wherever that courage came from, knowing now it's from my creator. But I had said, okay, I'm going to walk in. I know she's going to tell me no. I know that she's going to tell me weight loss surgery is an scapegoat, but I'm still going to ask her because I feel like I don't know if I can do this because I don't know how to eat. I don't know how to eat. And so I walked in and I said, okay, I've been thinking about this. I've booked an appointment 3 times in the last year and a half and canceled 3 times. But I would like to know if weight loss surgery would be a viable tool for me in my recovery. Thinking, okay, she's going to tell me no, but at least I asked her and I can just suck it up and I'll just have to deal with it. And she looked at me and she goes, I think it's a wonderful idea. I think it could be a necessary tool in your recovery. And I completely support you in that. And I just remember just having this deep sigh of relief because not only was I dealing with the psych aspect, I was dealing with a body that didn't even know what to do. And of course, weight loss surgery is a very radical decision. And for some people, you're going to look at this and think, oh, this is just the easy way out. This is the easy way out. Mish took the easy way out. Everyone that has weight loss surgery takes the easy way out. Everyone that has weight loss surgery is just lazy. And I don't think that weight loss surgery is for everyone. And I also think that a lot of people who have weight loss surgery have no idea the psychological implications of what they're going to do because it's not a requirement to have psychology before, at least where I'm at. And I'm really grateful that I did have psych before because I knew that the patterns of my addiction would still rise up and through even after I had weight loss surgery. And so on the 22nd of June, 2017, I had a mini omega loop bypass, and it has completely changed my life. Am I cured of my addiction? No. Does it consume my life? No. Does it rise up and through? Yes. Have I had regression? Of course. Have I had moments where I've still wanted to binge eat and I have done so? Yes. Have I felt a sense of freedom that I didn't know I ever had? Totally. It's not just one thing. It's not like you have a sleeve or a bypass or an RNY or whatever else you can possibly get or a banding and you're somehow cured of your addiction. No. It's just like when you give methadone to addicts. They're not cured of their addiction. It's a way to treat them, to help them in their process of recovery. So in June of 2017, which is a year from the time you'll hear this, I've lost over 35 kilos, which is over 70 pounds. But I think what I've gained is an incredible sense of who I am, of me unmasking everything that I had masked on since I was 4, had shown periods of it in my early 20s of being totally in zone and then falling back into my mask after the breakup with my boyfriend in 2008. Even in my marriage, I had been masked. Even in my marriage, I had not been totally with myself. And even in my marriage, I hadn't been totally with my husband. Not in the sense that I was cheating or having adulterated thoughts, just that I wasn't 100% in because I wanted to make sure that I had a way out. Because that is my propensity, especially with addiction, is to just be out. Food, running, cutting people off, etc. So as I thought about what I wanted to bring to you today, it was like, so what has helped me? What has helped me, even though I've had weight loss surgery, even though I've had psychology, what has helped me continue on this last year in recovery? The most important discovery that I had was this idea of self-compassion. I talk about it a lot now in my business as I've rejigged my whole entire focus in my business. Self-compassion, the gurus being Brené Brown and Kristen Neff, have been monumental in my understanding of unwinding gently, even now, my relationship with food, my relationship with exercise, my relationship with my body, my relationship with my husband, my daughter, family members, friends, even my anger and frustration with my business. I am able to ease with this idea of self-compassion. It also takes an incredible amount of time. And I think what we have created in our lives, especially with the self-help industry, especially even with the idea of building your business, is this instantaneous gratification, this instantaneous, I want to be fixed now. And when I realized that it's taken me a year after my weight loss surgery to even entertain the idea of exercise consistently, because it has been such an abusive thing. It has been more abusive, I think, than food itself. I knew that if I didn't give myself time, that I wouldn't be able to actually truly be in a space where movement and eating was compassion as opposed to restriction and deprivation. Absolutely, fundamentally, it has been my faith. There is nothing beyond intense psych that has given me the deepest joy and release and comfort as knowing that I am loved. When I understood that I was loved, no matter what size I was, no matter how much pizza or brownies or chocolate or alcohol I ate, I was loved even if the rage of my addiction came out in ways that I didn't want it to the people that I loved, that I knew I was free. Only then did I truly grasp this idea that I could be on a journey of recovery. It all felt kind of theoretical and untangible and unattainable. But when I knew that the love of my Creator was in me and had always been in me and had never left me, and I didn't have to leave that love, I somehow knew that even if I went into old patterns, they wouldn't constrict me and take me under anymore. That I knew that they were just little blips on the radar. They were little lessons, little signposts to reignite my journey of recovery. I was free. And people often ask me, like, what was the one thing or is the one thing that's helped you the most? It's absolutely my faith. 100% my faith. It is the thing that sustains me. It is the thing that allows me to speak to you today on this podcast. It's the thing that allows me to come out and through when I know that the ways in which I have changed my business and the ways in which I have changed over the last year is confronting for people and kind of perplexing for people. It's my faith. 100%. The practical things I've had to do as well is choosing to reduce hustle, having boundaries in my day to how available I am on social media, having boundaries in relationships that are toxic for me, and aligning myself and nourishing myself with friendships and relationships which are nourishing for me. And that has been excruciatingly confronting because there was a time when I had to shake out and through every single friendship and relationship in my life to say, do I want this person? Do I want these people in my life? What boundaries am I willing to compromise on? What boundaries do I want to have? How can I be, as Brené Brown would say, strong back soft front, wild heart? How can I be strong in my boundaries and yet still forgiving and open to people, but in a way that's healthy for me and not triggering? That has been challenging for me. I had to deeply and truly align with my authenticity. What is it that I feel called to do? Who am I when I want to show up? How do I want to show up? Am I going to listen to the noise of what people tell me I should be or what I think I should be? Even in my faith journey, I'm not a typical, I would say, Christian. I have a lot of open-minded views. I have a lot of past history that's not good Christian. I'm using quotations if you can see me right now. But I've been seeking out those conversations of really looking at what is it in my faith and how do I want to show up in that way, and what are the things that I believe for myself? What are the rituals that I want to have in my life? How do I want to parent? How do I want to live my life? It's been exhilarating and exhausting, and also a reminder that it takes time. And some of the things that have helped me, or the people that have helped me, absolutely have been Brene Brown and Kristen Neff on self-compassion. Shauna Niequist's book called Present Over Perfect was life-changing for me, and absolutely, I would almost dare to say, manifesto on how to live a slow, intentional life when you are burned out. Rebecca Lyons and Rebecca Casey also have some amazing books on cultivating an understanding of anxiety, burnout, and also cultivating exactly what you want. Some people that I love following on Instagram is Dr. Rebecca Ray. Elizabeth Smith has been incredibly nourishing for me and helping me still work through my relationship with food and exercise in such a holistic and gentle way. And becoming a certified life coach through Beautiful You Life Coaching Academy has been one of the best things I've ever done, because what it allowed me to do was to really spend time gently processing who I was in this journey, but also going, well, who do I want to serve? How do I want to show up as a coach? And what do I want to empower women to be? What do I want to empower women to do? And, I guess the thing for me over the last year has just been being myself. Being a liberal, feminist Christian, if that makes any sense, if that's an oxymoron, I don't know. If it's questioning how I show up emotionally, physically, and spiritually in my marriage, how I show up as a mother, how I show up as an entrepreneur, creating a pace that's sustainable and in season, all of the things I talk about are things that I am processing or have processed. And knowing that sharing my story as a recovering binge eater has empowered women to focus on themselves and their own relationship with food is something that I kind of shied away from for a long time, because I didn't want to be known as that girl who had the food issue problem or the weight problem or the dieting problem. But now I recognize that it's much deeper. It's systemic in the sense that we as women so often are so removed from our true soul's calling. We are hustling our days away. We are trying to reach a standard that's completely unattainable. And so we cope in all different ways. And for some of that, it's restrictions. Some of that's over-exercising. Some of that's being debilitated with choice. Some of that's having affairs, shopping, changing the way that we look so much because we feel like we need to be something else. And all I want to say to you, and all I have in my heart for this year anniversary, is that I hope that you take my journey and use it as a way to catapult you into deep, true alignment, that you now have the permission, the gentle or forceful permission, the awakening to know that you are loved, no matter what you have done, no matter what you are doing, no matter what you do down the path. There is redemptive love for you, radical, transformational love for you. And that comes from an awareness that you are worthy of being loved, even if you don't feel like you are. You are. And I hope that this next year is just another unraveling and a deeper awareness of where I feel called to serve you, my listeners, and to the people who I meet through my speaking and life coaching. And that I still have my feet deeply grounded on the earth, that I still have an authenticity about me that is unwavering and that is approachable. And to know that everything that I've gone through has been an absolute blessing, and that I honestly wouldn't have traded it ever. So thank you to each and every one of you as I celebrate 1 year of recovery and as I celebrate 1 year of radical change and ownership of my life. I just want to say thank you for being part of this journey. Thank you for joining me today. If you'd like more information about myself, my journey, my public speaking engagements, or life coaching with me, please head to my website, mishpope.com. If you can kindly leave me a beautiful review on iTunes, I would be forever grateful. I can't wait to connect again in the next episode.